to Six Figure Coach. We interview a successful coach and break down their business. We take you behind the scenes in their marketing, advertising, and sales campaigns. We show you what's working. We show you their frameworks, their proven strategies, so you can implement them in your business to grow. Now let's bring on this week's guest. Here is your host, Luke Charlton. Hey, this is Luke Charlton here, and welcome back to another episode of the Six Figure Coaches Show. Very excited to have you here. Oh, the desk is shaking a little bit here. Very excited to have you back for another episode. And I'm really excited for today's interview because today we have a former client that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot over the years. This client works in the mortgage space. Actually, he's scaling out to other industries, which I'm really excited to dive into that part of his story. But I have a lot of history with this particular client. We've ridden motorbikes together, and he's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to growing a successful coaching business. So I'll bring our guest on in just one moment. Before we do, remember, these episodes premiere inside the Hermit Hole. So if you go to thehermithole.com, that's just my private Facebook coaching community, every week, Tuesday, and you get to see them there first before they go live on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Okay, so come over to thehermithole.com and get access to these episodes. They're really trainings, right, to help you grow your coaching business, of me interviewing very, very successful coaches, the top 1%. Okay. So with that being said, without further ado, I would like to welcome today's guest, Mark Blundell. Now, Mark, welcome to Six Figure Coaches Show. Your journey, I'd love to just give some context for the coaches listening in, meeting you for the first time, because when we worked together, you actually we met through one of my webinars, right? And then we had a conversation after. This was like, what was it, like 6 years ago now? It was a long time ago. You watched one of my webinars. We had a conversation after. Then you became a client. And then we started working together with your clients who you're heavily in the mortgage broker space, helping mortgage brokers grow their business. And I think you're one of the very top mortgage coaches for mortgage brokers in Australia. However, I think based on our conversation, I mean, you can give some context. You may have even moved past the mortgage brokers and you're kind of going into more of a broader finance market. So for the coaches watching, can you just give a background as to a bit of your story as to how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me on, Luke. And I don't mean that in a literal sense, a metaphoric sense, of course. It's been an amazing journey. To put this into context, so I grew up in the mortgage and finance arena since I was like 19 or 20. I was successful in the finance insurance industry at a young age. And at a young age, as a result of the success, I was once flown out of Australia to San Francisco to talk to a bunch of people who were twice my age, most could be my dad, about selling life insurance, and was talking to them in San Francisco. And that gave me just an insight into the attribute about what I do, which that I love. And that is giving to people an advantage that, that you can, so that they can be successful. The opportunity, and I think this is lost on a lot of coaches, the opportunity to make a valuable contribution to somebody's life to help them to achieve is often overlooked, and it's such a privileged thing to do. So it's a privilege to get to stand in front of a group of people at, probably 24 years of age, or 23, whatever I was, and the other side of the world. And that gave me the insight into wanting to coach. Now, I kept up my work in the mortgage and finance arena for a while, but then started to think about doing my own live coaching sessions within larger organizations. So I was fortunately engaged by some of the biggest banks in the country, some of the biggest mortgage outlets and brand labels in Australia, to speak to their sales teams about the art of engaging with a customer. And I suppose my bent has always been the psychology into why anyone says yes to anything. And of course, that's what we all want to do if we're selling our coaching services. How
Right.
can I put this across in a way where it's meaningful to somebody and it becomes basically a no-brainer for them to accept
Mm.
the offer? And so after many years of working for some of the larger financial organizations in Australia, I got referred into New Zealand, and eventually into Canada, and eventually into America to speak live at different events. And then, of course, probably 6 years ago, I think, Luke, I was riding a motorbike. You speak of motorbikes. I was riding a motorbike for 1,000 kilometers with my wife on the back of the motorbike, listening to your webinar in my helmet, listening to this whole concept of selling coaching services online. And I literally had to stop and get off the bike. I just thought, what a revelation, because as you can see from my age, we didn't grow up with Facebook in my day. And so I knew very little about it. And so getting that insight that you gave in that webinar is a day that I will never, ever forget. And I remember eventually getting to Melbourne, my destination, and I couldn't wait to get off the bike to reach out to you, to have a conversation, to see how you could help me take what I was doing face to face and get it online to serve more people.
Wow,
So
I didn't know that.
that's how I get here.
Oh, wow. And so, so when we started working together, you wanted to continue working with mortgage brokers just in an online capacity. And that was with Mortgage Sales Mastery was the name. And now, now you're still working with mortgage brokers. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But also, is it broadening out to other markets as well?
Yeah. So I have two businesses in actual fact.
Yep.
I have Mortgage Sales Mastery that creates sales outcomes, let's call it that, for people in the mortgage industry. It also does so for people in the real estate industry and accounting industry. Okay. And essentially, my coaching and training, that attribute, teaches people how do you explore within a conversation and discover a pain point that is something that you can solve. So that's what Mortgage Sales Mastery does in that realm. Two or 3 years ago, I set up a company called the Over 50s Consultant because I saw an opportunity for people a bit older than me, obviously, over 50, who, were facing redundancies, but really still in the prime of their working life. And I thought, I'm so grateful for the opportunity I received via you initially. I wonder if I can teach people how to monetize their skills online and overcome the burden of, too old to hire, yet too young to retire.
Yep.
So I have those two businesses as such.
Okay, very nice. And how is, we haven't had a chat in a while in terms of that side of your business, that newer side. How is that going? Like, what's the sales and marketing process? We'll talk about the sales and marketing process for both. So let's start with the over 50s. How do you attract clients on that side of the aisle?
So I have a partner, for those of you in Australia may know that brand name Simon Reynolds, who in the 80s and 90s created the iconic AIDS Grim Reaper commercial. So he's my colleague in this venture. And what we do is we run ads on social media. We do video ads on social media where we speak to a problem that is encountered by people of our age. And what we try to do is ignite their imagination about what destination they could have rather than what they're looking at right now. And we invite them to a live, 90-minute sales webinar or a webinar that will look at how someone of that age can make an extraordinary income by monetizing their skills. And so it's an interesting group of or cohort of people, Luke, because we have university professors, authors, like just some extraordinary people. And because they don't have the skill of understanding how to market online, they're very much, unfortunately, come up against this desire to continue to growing their career. But of course, there's the newer, younger model in behind them that seems to get more of the attention relative to their subject. So that's how that one works.
Okay. And so you use a webinar to attract, and you're selling a course on the webinar, or do you go to a phone call at the end of that webinar?
No. Okay. So we sell a course to a webinar. That's a $14.97 offer US.
Yep.
And that course goes for about 6 to 8 weeks. Now, there's a focal point in that particular course by design, and that is we teach people how to make money in their third week. So we tell them that we will show them how to start making money in their third week. And of course, the believability scales, the thirst for more scales from there.
Yeah, wow.
So we take them through that. And then we have a second tier course, which they then buy into, which is $5,500, that teaches them the skills of scaling.
Okay, interesting. So what, that begs the question, right? Because actually there's 2 lessons there. I'm going to ask, what do you actually teach? But for those coaches listening, getting someone a quick result in your program doesn't have to be business. It could be a weight loss result. It could be, whatever it is, getting some dates or whatever, is a very smart way to enhance your offer, right? If you can go, when you go to pitch your offer, whether it's in a webinar or a sales call, and you say, hey, yeah, within the first 3 to 4 weeks, you will have this result. Again, even though the program's 8 weeks or whatever it is, very, very powerful way to get people to take action now. So I just wanted to point that out. Number 2, how do you actually do that? I'm curious.
Okay, so we do a couple of things which you might find interesting. So what we look at is we go, okay, in real terms, anyone can jump on the internet, go to Google, YouTube, or whatever else, and get the information we're going to give them anyway. So we look at that and we go, if this information is available through, albeit a bit of searching, why isn't it that people are doing it already? So in other words, we look at a prospect for our course and go, so what are the reasons they're not doing this themselves already? And ultimately it's, lack of time, lack of confidence, or lack of know-how. And so we look at that and we go, okay, or maybe they've tried before and not achieved the results. So we look at those outcomes first of all, and we go, okay, if we can raise the believability in what it is that we're offering in somebody's mind in a short period of time, it will increase their stickability to get to the end of the process. It will escalate their belief level. Now, for people who are over 50, one of the things that's very apparent is a lot of people who get to that age, maybe they have been made redundant, often lose their confidence in themselves. They could have been, one of the best during their heyday, but once you get a few gray hairs in your head and someone says they don't want to employ you anymore, the apparent loss of confidence is so common for that age group. So we thought, okay, we got to reverse that first. We have to get somebody to get some sort of a win. So we do 2 things. In our live Zoom, what we actually do is this. So let's just say, Luke, you were someone who teaches people how to draw, hypothetically. And so you might be on our live Zoom, and we might have 200, 300, 400 people on the Zoom. And probably a third of the way in, we'll go, all right, everybody, what I want you to do is grab your cell phone, and we put a script up on the screen. We say, SMS this to 2 of your best friends right now. And so the script says something like this: I'm thinking of creating a short 4 to 6 week online course teaching people how to draw. By the end of the course, they will be able to do da 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 da. Do you think this is a good idea? Right? And so within the Zoom, they will be getting yeses already. Right? Instant win. Number 1. If you can't trust your best friend's advice, whose advice can you take? So, obstacle 1, overcome. Then we say, as we showed you, we're going to show you how to now take that idea and get it online. And in the course, we give them a small script that's not dissimilar to the one I've just explained,
Mm.
where they post that on their Facebook page, Instagram page, LinkedIn page, blah, 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 that essentially follows that same thing. Hey, I'm thinking of creating a 6-week online course that helps people to overcome problem and helps them to describing the destination.
Yep.
After 6 weeks, they should expect to da-da-da. If this is something you would like to achieve for yourself, just type yes in the comments.
Yeah.
Right? So
I did the same thing at the end of my second module after they've crafted an offer. I just showed them how to take that and put it on Facebook.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so then we teach them about, okay, the first step to being a coach or consultant selling an online course is getting somebody to get money out of their pocket to pay you. $100, $200, $300, $500. Even if you've got grand ideas of wanting to sell your program for $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, then it might be worth that. Give yourself some validation that you have an idea that people are prepared to spend money on. And so we teach them to do that. We teach them to make 5 sales at a minimum of $500 each. And what that gives them then is $1,000 in front of what they're already spent. So they've already got their money back for our course. Their believability is high. They're now dreaming again about what they can achieve. They've made more money than what they've spent. Now we can get them to focus on, you know, sticking in, doing some of the hard yards that they need to do to become successful. So that's the model. You know,
and that's great. And so do they just promote just their friends and family initially, do they?
So we teach them how to do that initially. Then we teach them to get referrals from the first 5 or 6 participants.
How do you do that?
Program. So once again, most people ask for referrals at the end of a program or at the completion of a transaction. You know, Luke, if you're happy with my service, can you think of anyone else, you know? So we teach them a different way. 2 weeks in, right? Anyone 2 weeks into a program, 2 weeks into a coaching session, coaching or consulting agreement, we know that this person is at their peak. It's the best time to ask them then, even though you haven't completed what you're doing, it's the best time to ask them for a referral right there. And so instead of going, do you know anyone else who'd like my program? It might be, hey, you know, there's a saying, so we give them this script where we would say, there's a saying that goes, birds of a feather flock together. Now, you're obviously keen to lose weight, and most people who are trying and struggling to lose weight know other people who are trying and struggling to lose weight. Is there anyone else that you know of who is trying to struggle and lose weight that perhaps you can introduce me to via email? And after that, I'll take over. And so we encourage, so if that was you, Luke, you might be going, hey, Mary, on your email, hey, Mary, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Blundell. Mark has been helping me to, you know, lose weight, and so far into it's been really good. Mark, over to you. And then I will take up the conversation with Mary. Now, the important part about doing it that way is I don't put any onus on my client who's referring me to sell my program because they can't. Right. And I think the whole process of referral marketing gets lost because we, you know, go to a client and we expect them to be as good as us to pitch our program to somebody else. And, you know, most people can't do that. And so that's the referral bit.
Okay, awesome. And so, okay, so that's the over 50s side, and we're talking about the 1,500 and the 5K offer. What does it look like on the mortgage broker side? Because you've got more of an agency on that side now, don't you? Do you still do coaching on that side as well? Can you just lay out kind of like the structure of your business in terms of the different offers, like the business model?
Okay, yeah, certainly can. So we can help mortgage brokers at the highest end of the market around the world. So we started out teaching the lower end of the market. How do you build an email list? How do you do this? But I identified something here. I thought we can either offer a service that solves problems for people, or we can offer a service that helps them exploit opportunities. And in doing that, we attract a different client, right? So I look at it and I go, do you know what? I don't want to sit around talking to somebody about trying to solve their problem, because there's a glass ceiling in there, and there's only a small number that will come to this ascendancy point where I can offer them a second course or be of some greater value. Why don't I offer a service, which, do you know what? Here's the funny thing. It's exactly the same service. But why don't I pitch this from the perspective of exploiting an opportunity? All right. So if we look at two mortgage brokers, one struggling to find clients, and the other's looking to scale from $1 million to $2 million, hypothetically, right? How do they do it? Well, both need to do transactions with mortgages at the end of the day to achieve their objectives, right? But their outlooks are different. And so we will go to this guy over here for a number of reasons. One, he's already making, or she's already making enough money to be able to afford the offer. Number two is what we might charge for $3,000 down here to this person, we could probably sell for 30, 40, or 50,000 to this guy, this person. They've got more money to scale, invest in ads and all of that. And so the bang for buck is far greater. So we've shifted our attention, and that's the market that at selling the same product, that's the market that we pitch to.
Interesting.
And to those people, then what we do is we offer two versions. We say, one, we can build the Zoom call idea that I talked about about the over 50s, where they will pay us to create their ads, their videos. They'll run a live Zoom. We'll help them with the whole presentation. We'll help them with their slides. We'll help them make sales. And they will either sell one of two things: appointments in their calendar or an online financial education course. But here's the thing: none of them sell mortgages. So we've shifted them and said, you need to sell not to people who need a mortgage, people who want to exploit an opportunity. Make that opportunity. How do I use the equity that I've accumulated in my home to buy an investment property? And how can I leverage off that to create a portfolio? And so their live trainings that they do, their live Zooms, once again, focus on pitching to opportunists.
And that's what we found when we ran ads. Remember, our most successful ads for the mortgage brokers that we ran were ones around, it wasn't like, hey, do you want to do a refinance? They did poorly. But the ones that were like, hey, do you want to remodel your home, right? Or do you want to redo your kitchen? They always did better. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course. How to do that? Oh, you do a refinance. Here's the money. And
so it's so much easier to influence somebody looking for an opportunity than it is for someone who's seeking to solve a problem. Now, here's the thing. We talk about influence. And again, we've thought about this, and I really feel that these are the anchor points of the ongoing success that we're grateful to achieve. And that's this. We've stopped trying to convince people that our product is a great product and why it's good for them. And we've shifted to, how do we persuade someone that this is in their best interest to do that? And while we can't issue guarantees, what we can guarantee, and what we do guarantee everybody, is of all the options they've got, I guarantee you this one is going to give you the best chance of exploiting that opportunity that you're looking for. So our whole ethos and outlook has completely changed. And the enjoyment of the day-to-day business has changed dramatically as a result.
You're working with a higher level of client on that side now. I remember who we were working with before, they were really beginners into the online space, those mortgage brokers, which can be anyone that's kind of new to a subject it takes a lot more energy to get them results. And they give up easier, right? Because they're not as invested, right? Because they're only just starting. So there are a lot of benefits to working with a high level of clients, someone that's a bit more experienced, has a bit more money. Definitely, I love that. So when you say you do these Zooms, you set up the Zooms, is that just you mean like a webinar or something? Basically?
Live webinar, yeah. Live webinar.
Okay. And how do you get clients? Is it just through referrals on that side, or do you do live webinars to get clients as well on that side?
So all of that work comes by referral.
Okay.
So exactly what I just discussed about referrals a few minutes back, I do myself. So I will work with someone 2 weeks in. What happens is they go from being stale in their outlook to all of a sudden seeing a brand new world.
Yeah.
And it's at that tipping point moment that the magic really happens in the customer's mind. all of a sudden, concepts, thoughts, outcomes that they never dared to think about, all of a sudden take on a new level of reality, because now there's the conduit of accomplishment that's come forward that they had never been shown or thought about before. And so that puts them on a high. What a great time to say, hey, do you know anyone else who wants this, who wants to achieve this? Can you put me in contact? So, and most high achievers are no other high achievers. It doesn't matter what field you're in, whether you're talking to an Olympian or the guy who's really good at playing marbles in the playground. They all associate with like-minded people. And I think as a coach, so many people miss out on that opportunity, and because they don't appreciate birds of a feather flock together. And that's been around for such a long time. It must have merit, right?
Yeah, that's sort of like the value of. I think that's it. There's networking, and then there's a network. So networking is when you go to those those down the local road, and everyone who's desperate for clients. I mean, I did it when I was in London for like 5 nights per week for almost 12 months. And everyone who went there, they're not high level players, right? They're looking for clients as well. That's not a network of, the value of a network of getting in and act like a real network, where then you're referred to. Like, I've had so many Facebook ad referrals from just like 6-7-figure coaches that know other 7-figure coaches, that once word gets around when you do really good work for one of them, like it will spread, because it's so hard to find good quality businesses that deliver that are real experts, number one. And particularly with agencies, right? There are a lot of like great marketers that run agencies, but because they're not running, they're great marketers, but they don't know how to actually run a team or a business. And so the level of service really drops off once they go to build a team. And so to find like even just a really good quality agency is a very, very hard thing to do. So that's why, when you start getting good results for clients, and you're in that type of high quality network, you can get a lot of other high quality clients coming through as well.
Look, that leads on to this thought. And I think for those who might be listening in and thinking about how they can grow their consulting or their coaching business, I think often too much emphasis in the sale, in the marketing, in the growth is made of the program. This is something I've learned. I've thought to myself, I had a mate, this is a good story. I had a mate of mine who unfortunately was turning right at an intersection and didn't see an oncoming motorcyclist come the other way, and unfortunately bumped him off the bike. Didn't kill the guy, but he broke a few bones. And so obviously that incident ends up in court. Now, my friend had never met with a lawyer before. And I said, where did you get this lawyer who's going to represent you? And he said, friend of a friend, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. John, my mate, he had no idea whether this guy was good or bad until we got to the courtroom, right? That's where you find out. Much is the same with an online course. We can all tell people, or our coaching, it's this, that, and the other. And I think if we shift from that and shift to focusing on the value of proximity to us, and make people understand that it's that proximity. It's like, Luke, I bought proximity to you when, you and I engaged. I didn't buy your course. I bought proximity. And I think when we can focus on selling the value of proximity in our coaching or consulting offers, it becomes easier to sell, because you ask your customer, well, why aren't you doing this now? And they're going to say, because of this, and this, doesn't matter what it is. And you're going to go, well, what are your chances of being successful having somebody to work with every week? Again, proximity. And so there's networking, but networking with the goal of proximity and the value and attributes of that, I think, is imperative.
Yeah, I love it. Now, let me ask, what do you think are some of the mistakes that coaches make when trying to either market or sell their program?
Okay, so there are two perspectives when you're marketing. There's your perspective, and then there's your customer's perspective, right? And I tell the people I work with, I go, right, so let's grab your perspective. And what I want you to do is go out to your backyard, grab a shovel, dig the biggest hole you can over an hour, and put your perspective in there, because your customer does not want to know what the world looks like through your eyes.
Yeah.
So that leaves you with one perspective. So that's the first thing. A coach getting in his or her own road, telling the customer what's good for them, right?
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
The second thing is that's mistake one. And so you may well be right. You may say, hey, this course of action is going to really help you. But I always think, do you know what? If you're talking to a medical practitioner, for instance, a doctor, prescription without diagnosis is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So I always think one of the biggest mistakes they make is not asking enough questions. How is it that the person got here? Why is it that the person hasn't solved that problem already? How come? How does that make them feel? What is their prognosis for the future, heading on the trajectory that they are? What do they think will change it? Why do they want the end outcome? So do you see, all of these questions have nothing to do with me. It's all about that person. And so to answer your question in short form, take your practitioner's hat off as a consultant and a coach when you're talking to a client or a prospective client, and invest in them.
Yeah, absolutely. See, one of the things, it's what's that phrase? It's kind of where it's like the curse of knowledge, right? So that's us coaches. We are so deep in, I say this all the time, we're so deep in our own product and our own subject that we know the problems our clients have, right? We know the real problem. And so we start talking to them in that language, and it just goes, they're not an expert, right? So it just goes over their head. And we're like, well, why aren't they responding to my ad or my emails? Like, this is the problem, and I'm telling it. And they're not making the connection with, well, the reason why I'm they're just thinking like, I'm overweight, right? I'm overweight. I feel really awkward going to dinners with family. I just go from different diet to different diet. And you're telling them like, well, the reason why is this particular hormone or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you're leading with that. And as I said, it goes over their head. And so what we have to do, as you said, Mark, is to speak to the language that's going on in your prospect's mind. And the only way to do that is, as you just said, get out of your own way. Don't ignore your perspective. Find out what their perspective is in their exact words, right? And the best way to do that is ask questions. I think sales calls are a really great way to do research. Like, I'm always learning about my market just from doing the discovery process of a sales call, right? Because you ask them like, what's your goal? What are you struggling with? Why do you think you haven't solved that problem yet? What's going to happen if you don't solve all those questions? And you learn a lot about their fears, their frustrations, their desires. And then you just reflect that back to them in your marketing message. So I agree with you that we have to stop speaking to what we know that they need, right? And speak to what they want. So sell them what they want and give them what they need. So you and I are not telling coaches to change their coaching. This is a marketing lesson, right? Sell them what they want and give them what they need. Would you agree with that?
Oh, without a doubt. There are 4 basic elements in every first phone call that you need to focus on. One is being able to clarify in very succinct language the outcome they want. You know, you talk about the weight loss scenario. I recently, the last 4 weeks, came back. I did a presentation, the first one post-COVID, live, face-to-face in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like many people, I've been sitting in this chair probably longer than I should through the course of COVID, and they've put on a few kilos, right, or a few pounds in weight. And so I've dressed up before giving my presentation, and I've looked at myself and I go, I know my message is good, but there's some, it doesn't sync up. I've got this, I don't look that healthy. I want the two to sync up, right? So everyone could talk to me about losing weight, have shakes, do this, do that. One person said to me, when's one time that your excess weight has made you feel awkward? And I said, when I was presenting in front of 300 people in Arizona, and they said to me, what if the next presentation you didn't have to feel that? Now I'm in. That's all I have to do. About if it's weight loss, for instance, it's seeing it through the customer's eyes and asking that right question, not talking about what do you eat in the morning, do you exercise, blah. It's all irrelevant to me at that point. You've got to get to why I want the end outcome so much.
Yeah.
And so, so that goal, number one. Number two is whatever you offer has to sound realistic. Like, you like to be a millionaire in the next week isn't realistic. Number three is how quickly can you make it happen? And number four is, you know, what level of commitment does this person have to put in to get the outcome?
Right.
Now, if you can amplify what they want and give them lots of testimonials and social proof as to why that's achievable and describe it in terms that brings it forward. Remember, I talked about that early payoff and minimize the amount of work somebody has to do to get there. Then a sale just takes place. There is no sale.
Can you go through that? So that 4 elements, that's almost like the 4 elements of like putting together a great offer, right? So can you just quickly go back over those 4 elements?
Sure. Okay. The first thing is to be able to succinctly clarify the ideal outcome your customer wants. And so if we go back to my analogy of speaking in Arizona, what do I want? I don't want to lose weight. Do you want to look good so that the quality of your message and the perception of your health marries up at your next presentation?
Yeah.
So that's seeing the offer through my eyes. 1. 2 is, so when's your next presentation? It's in 7 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Right. We can accomplish that in that time frame. So the time frame that you suggest has to be realistic. Like, you can't say, oh, well, you'll just wake up tomorrow and that be that size. Because I just go, well, that's not possible. So the time frame, the level of realism has to play a huge component in your offer. Then the next part is, how long is it going to take? Well, okay, how long? How long? When can I expect that by? Going back to my over 50s pitches, you know, by day 21, you'll be looking at your bank account and it will have increased because you've made your first sales. So we've reduced that perceived time frame into something acceptable in the potential client's mind of an outcome, not the total outcome, an outcome. So time frame. And the last bit is their level of contribution. Like, what do they need to do to get that? So what we want to try and do is, with the greatest of clarity, describe the end goal and underscore it as best we can with as much realism as possible. So social proof, blah, 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 blah. So really augment those two things.
Yeah.
And at best, try and reduce the time frame of some accomplishment to the shortest period of time. And minimizing the amount of, you know, commitment, contribution that this person needs to make.
I like that. And one thing to note there, for the first pillar with the outcome, right? It ideally, you want to make it measurable, right? So instead of just like, so measurable would be like, you know, losing 30 pounds, or it could be get X amount of clients, or to get X amount of revenue, or to get us to a certain amount of dates. right? Try and make the goal like a number of some type, because then you can then we know what a measurable goal is, right? Then you can put a time frame on it. It's always harder to sell these like ambiguous kind of outcomes that don't really like. So for example, I've got a client that I'm helping with. She signed up. Speaking of like the last pillar, which is like, what level of commitment, right? That's why done for you offers are really so valuable, because they don't really have to commit much. But anyway, this client, she is she's in finance similar to you. She's a financial advisor for women. And her program that she wants to sell, the outcome is like, I will help you become financially confident. Like what does that even mean? Like, how do you know when they become financially confident, right? So that's what we're having these conversations about, in terms of like, what's a more specific measurable goal that we can actually have for your program? Because once you have that measurable goal, it makes your offer much more powerful. Would you agree with that?
Totally. The difficulty with people who deal with numbers is that that's where the majority of their thought patterns are domiciled. So financially comfortable does mean something to them, but it doesn't to the listener. It
Exactly,
does mean
right.
to be measurable. It does mean to, but
Yeah.
The other thing is, there's an in-between bit that still is the measurable attribute. It's like, going back to my scenario, imagine if a weight loss coach says to me, so given that you see that there's this mismatch between a quality message that you're presenting and you look like you're carrying 30 pounds more than you have, and there's a mismatch. At the end of your presentation, what do you want people to do? And so I might go, well, I want them to buy my course, right? And creating measurable would be, okay, so how much more effective would your message be if there was this, you looking healthy, fit, etc.? How much would your believability grow by? And what would that translate to into a differential between the number of courses you might sell now and the future? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? So you can get your measure there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power of that is you let them tell you in their own words.
That's right.
And then they can't. What's Robert Cialdini says, like, the most powerful form of persuasion is the consistency bias. So they speak whatever it is, and then you hold them to that, right? So if they say, oh, that'd be worth an extra 10% in sales, then you come back to that at the end of the sales call. You're using their language then, and not using it against them, but kind of using it to keep them accountable, if that makes sense.
That's right. And in the reverse, if they answer, well, I don't know, I'd go, well, why do you want to go through all the trouble of losing weight?
Yeah.
Just come back to it again. Do you know?
Yeah, ask a question. Yeah. Yeah, I ask that on my sales calls, like when someone says, like, like it was actually last week, a guy that signed up as well for a done for you offer. He's like, yeah, I could do this, and this, try and fix it. I was like, well, why? I asked him, like, why are we having this conversation? Basically, is what I said, like, why even come to me for help? And he's like, oh, because with you, I know I could get it done a lot faster. So the point is, you can ask very like direct questions like that, like, well, why even invest with me, or why even are we having this conversation if you can do this, if you can just keep kind of doing what you're doing and know that you'll get there? And they will tell you the reason why they really, they can't actually get there without your help, or whatever it is that you're asking them about. So yeah, I think that's a great sales. Again, you don't need to do it. They'll overcome those objections for you just with your questions 100%. That you ask.
But I think you need to be direct in your, not, and be mindful of your tonality, of course, but be direct in your questioning. Like, hey, you are the expert, so you actually have the podium to throw those questions at them, So yes, I think it's always important to call people on, another one, especially in sales calls, I think that a lot of coaches and consultants don't do, is the start of a call. And I encourage people to do this at the start of a call. Hey, Luke, there are so many things that you could be doing today. You could be riding your motorbike. It's nice and sunny. You could be playing with your kids. You could be working. You could be making money. You could be sleeping. I have one question for you, Luke. Tell me, why did you actually show up? Now that's a much better question of why did you book your appointment? Why did it?
Yeah.
Tell me what prompted you to show up.
Do you ask
today.
that like do you ask that in the middle of the call though?
First start. That's
Right at the
question
beginning.
number one.
Yeah,
Why
right.
did you? Because I'll say to you, hey Luke, you had every opportunity to cancel, not turn
Yep.
up. That's what happens. Life could have got busy. Your
Yep.
kid could be sick. I really want you to answer me. Why did you show up?
Mm, mm.
And that is the best question to get to the fundamental reason of what that problem is in the shortest possible time. That one question.
Yeah, do you say because again, language is important. Do you say why did you show up, or why did you really show up with that tonality?
Just why did you show up when you didn't have to?
Okay.
And just I'd be very quiet at the end of it. Why did you show up?
Yeah.
And often you'll get something like, well, I saw your ad and blah blah blah, and thought it was a good offer. And I often, I'd be sometimes a little bit playful, and I say, before I put my ad out there, I showed it to my wife, and she thought it was a pretty good ad and gave me the seal of approval too. But let's get back to the question: why did you show up?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
I
keep coming back to that, because we need to know that. We need to know, why did this person make the decision out of anything else you could do?
In their words too.
In their words.
Yeah, because the offer for my ad is I help you book appointments, right? Yeah. So I could just say that, I could say, well, did you shop because you wanted more appointments? But obviously that's not as powerful as if you ask the question and get them to tell you in their own words, and then they own the problem.
A lot of people, when they're asking questions, do this, and this is another trap for young players, where you'll go, hey, why did you show up? Did you show up because this? Don't give them multiple choice. Just ask the question and shut up. Let them talk. Because I want them to use their mind. I want them, because a lot of people who want coaching or direction have never spent the time to actually put the correct wordings around what it is that they want solved. And it's important that they do that, because if you help someone to do that and they tell you, they feel listened to.
Yeah.
So it's not a technique of sales, it's actually a technique of connection. Why did you show up today? Oh, well, because I saw your ad. Yeah, but that's the ad. But you could have done a million other things. Why did you actually click the button and turn up on this call?
Yeah.
Well, I want that. Right. Tell me more about that. Why is that important? And so that question is the starting point for every other question.
Yeah.
That one. And then the other tail end of that question is, so I just want to know, why do you want that outcome so badly? Is another key question. And I use those words, so badly. And what makes you think that you'll succeed this time where in the past you haven't? And then they'll give you, because I'm sick of this. Enough's enough. Do you know? Yeah. So that questioning technique, which is total investment in them, that doesn't require you to talk even for a minute on what you do, is the one thing that you should be doing. And the customer will sell themselves.
Yep.
As you said.
Yeah. Love it. All right, Mark, one last question. If you were standing at the top of a mountain and you got all these coaches below you, and you could just shout one thing at the top of that mountain to help them become more successful, what would that be?
You can't think and do at the same time.
Expand on that.
So a lot of coaches spend a lot of time thinking, I wonder if I'll do this. What if I was to do that? And it means they never do anything, because you can't think and do at the same time.
Yep.
And so doing is more important than thinking, because we all try and play God or whoever with a crystal ball and try and anticipate, oh, well, if I put this in my ad, if I make my landing page look like this, if I say that, we could, well, the only proof of that is only ever going to come by doing it. So go and do it. Stop thinking, doing is more important. So that's what I would yell out and say.
Yeah, love it. All right, thanks, Mark. It's been a great interview, actually. We're going longer than the 30 minutes that we usually go. So that show tells you anything. It was a great discussion. So where can coaches or others listening in go to learn more about what it is that you do?
Well, you can reach out to me if you want to at mark@mortgagesalesmastery, all one word, .com.au. That's the best place to go. And if you're interested in asking something, I'm more than happy to respond in kind to any question that you have.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks again for giving up your time being on the Six Figure Coaches show. And if you want to be promoted on the show as well, to have your story shared, all you have to do is go to podcast.lukecharlton.com and you can apply through that link, and I'll come on and I'll interview you to all the coaches listening in my community. So Mark, once again, thank you for coming on. Been an amazing discussion. So many gold nuggets in this conversation, and I look forward to, we'll do this again sometime in the future. Absolutely. Okay, look forward
Luke, can I say this to you just before I go?
Oh.
I often say no to these things.
Yep.
There is one person who I genuinely can attribute a lot of my success to, and that's you. But not just you, your patience, your desire to teach, your desire to share, your desire to share in my ambitions at the time was, absolutely fabulous. So, all kudos to you. And, if these podcasts bring you more business, or if someone's sitting on the fence, should I use this guy with the beard? I would. Definitely.
I did a bit of a shade, but thanks, mate. I really appreciate that. I'll slip you that 20 at the end of the show.
I thought we said 50. No. Okay, good to talk to you.
Thanks, mate. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, and we'll see you in the next episode. See you then.